If you'd told me a month ago I'd be giving a 4th of July address to a crowd of 500 employees, live streamed to millions, I would have laughed, poured another cheap whiskey, and told you to stop watching motivational reels. Yet there I was, spotlights in my face, teleprompter glowing, my reflection bouncing off a sea of cameras. The banner behind me read, Cruise Industries, a new era. Yeah, that wasn't me. Not even close. The funny thing, for about 28 days, everyone thought it was. But the short answer, the one I probably should have led with, is that I didn't get here. I stole it. And just as I was about to say something profound about innovation and global unity, the ballroom doors slammed open and the police marched in like it was a Quentin Tarantino cold open. The crowd gasped. I blinked under the lights. One of the officers walked right up to the podium. You're under arrest for fraud, impersonation, and forgery. The microphone screeched as I laughed. Yeah, I laughed. Because really, how else do you react when your entire fake billionaire fantasy implodes on live television? Flashback. 1 month ago. So, rewind. A month ago, I was broke, behind on rent, and debating whether exposure counted as payment for a writing gig. Spoiler, it didn't. My fridge was an echo chamber, my bank account was a war crime, and my landlord had started calling me by my full name, which is never a good sign. Then I met him. Florian Cruz, German, sharp suit, hair that probably had its own agent, looked exactly like me if I'd been fed, groomed, and kissed by sunlight. It happened on the metro. He was scrolling his phone. I was trying not to think about the smell of burnt rubber, and then our eyes met. It was one of those weird mirror moments. We froze, pointed at each other like the goddamn Spider-Man meme, and people actually stared. We laughed it off because what else do you do when the universe makes a clerical error and spits out your copy? Over coffee. His treat, obviously. I learned he wasn't just some European tourist. He was the Florian Cruz, business mogul, heir to a tech empire, Forbes cover regular, the kind of guy who probably had an assistant to pre-warm his towel. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out if I could afford another refill. He said he was in the States to inspect a new US base for his company, officially. Unofficially, he was hiding from the German press and burnout. Said it with that casual billionaire detachment that made me want to punch him and be him at the same time. We spent the day talking, walking, and drinking. He was magnetic. Easy charm, sharp wit, just enough self-loathing to make him tolerable. By the time we ended up in my tiny apartment, I'd decided he was too human to hate. And that's when he dropped it. Let's trade lives, just for a week. I laughed, obviously. I thought he was drunk. But then he grinned. That slow, confident grin rich men get when they already know the world's going to let them do whatever they want. And just like that, my life stopped being mine. 3 days later. 3 days later, I was standing in a German airport pretending I knew what the hell I was doing. The whole billionaire exchange program had sounded fun in theory, until I was surrounded by signs I couldn't read. Men in suits waiting for someone important, and me, trying not to sweat through Florian's tailored shirt. I kept checking the arrival gate for a nameplate or some kind of chauffeur situation, but instead, I got him. Luca Marcus, British Italian, 6 foot something of calm, composed menace dressed in navy and leather. The kind of man who made eye contact felt like a background check. His hair was slicked back just enough to look effortless. His jawline had its own lighting, and his voice, when he finally spoke, hit somewhere between velvet and thread. "Mr. Cruz?" I blinked. "Yeah, that's me." The lie slipped out smoothly. God, I was proud of that one. He smiled. Barely. Professional, polite, But there was a flicker in his eyes that said he was already cataloging the inconsistencies. Wrong shoes, wrong scent, maybe even the way I breathed. "Welcome back, sir," he said, taking my carry-on before I could object. "Did you have a pleasant flight?" I should have said something neutral, billionaire-y. Instead, my brain went rogue. "You're British?" I asked. "Half," he said, glancing at me. "My mother's Italian." Right, of course. Makes sense. It didn't, but I said it anyway, because thinking was apparently optional now. And that's when it hit me, the full cosmic joke. Out of all the people I could have met, Florian's assistant had to look like that. The kind of guy who made your moral compass spin and your IQ drop 10 points. He walked like control was second. Nature. Slow, measured, confident. I followed, pretending not to notice the curve of his shoulders or the way he rolled his sleeves up like he'd been born with a degree in foreplay. By the time we reached the car, I was dangerously close to making an ass of myself. So naturally I did. "Dinner?" I blurted. He turned to me, one brow raised. "I beg your pardon?" "Dinner," I repeated, trying to sound casual and failing spectacularly. I figured, since I've been gone, we could, catch up. Talk about what I've missed. He studied me for a long second. Too long. Then opened the car door. "Of course, sir," he said, his tone unreadable. "I'll make a reservation." And that was the moment I knew I was completely, irreversibly screwed. Later that night, the restaurant Luca picked wasn't one of those velvet-draped cliches. It was glass and gold. Sleek, quiet power. The kind of place where the wine list had its own security detail. He walked ahead, greeted the host in German, and even the maître d' straightened his tie. I just followed, trying to look like a man who belonged, not one silently wondering if the bread was free. We sat by the window, city lights below, candlelight above, Luca across from me, sleeves rolled, tie loose, hand on his glass. The devil probably took notes from this man. "So," he said, leaning back, "how are the States? Hot? Loud? Overrated?" "I wouldn't know," he said. "You refused to take me along." Right. Florian hadn't mentioned that. I smirked. "Guess I needed some alone time." "Of course." He sipped, eyes never leaving mine. "Did you find what you were looking for?" That tone hit harder than the question. Luca spoke like he already knew the truth. "You could say that." He studied me, tilting his head. "Something's different. Can't tell if it's the hair, the posture, or something else. Maybe I needed that break more than I thought." He smiled faintly, knowing. "Whatever it was, it worked. You're lighter, less armored." That got under my skin. He said it like a compliment. The waiter arrived with our food, but the silence after was thick, charged. I caught myself watching the vein on his neck, the open collar, the way his shirt moved when he breathed. "Too late," he noticed. "Something wrong." "Just jet lag," he smirked. Jet lag doesn't usually stare back. I nearly choked on my wine. He didn't blink. After that, he toyed with me. Glances, half smiles, fingers brushing mine when he passed the salt. By dessert, I'd stopped pretending to eat. Every look felt like a test I was failing. When the bill came, he paid without asking. As we stood to leave, he said it. Low, casual, lethal. "You really are different, Mr. Cruz." I forced a smile. "For better or worse?" He paused, lips curving. "Haven't decided yet." And just like that, I knew I was done for. 1 week later. 1 week. That's all it took to understand why Florian had flown the coop. The first couple of days were incredible. Flashbulbs, cameras, people shouting my name like I'd cured cancer. I won't lie, I loved it. For 48 hours, I felt untouchable. Then it turned into hell. I couldn't step outside without some creep checking the light with a telephoto lens, couldn't grab a burger without ending up tomorrow's headline, and to top it off, I couldn't read a damn word of German. Menus, signs, emails, Felt like IKEA instructions without the diagrams. By day 7, I gave up, locked myself in Florian's penthouse, told the staff I was recuperating, and let the world spin. My only point of contact? Luca. He handled everything. Calls, deliveries, and company jargon I didn't understand. To everyone else, I was Mr. Cruz on a personal week. In reality, I was in silk pajamas, drinking $300 wine, and stress-eating imported chocolate like it was therapy. Meanwhile, Florian was living his best life in the States. Dive bars, my clothes, not a care in the world. "You should enjoy it, mate," he'd say. "Yeah," I'd mutter, loving being hunted by Nikon lenses. But there were perks, namely, Luca. I told myself it was about keeping him close so he wouldn't catch on. Truth was, I just liked having him around. Too much. It started small. Late night calls over stupid things. "Hey Luca, how do I work the espresso machine?" "It's the same one you've had for 3 years, sir." "Right, just making sure it's calibrated." Or, "There's a weird noise in the vent." "Shall I send maintenance?" No. Maybe you should come check it yourself. You know, for safety." He always came, professional, composed, the opposite of the chaos I was pretending to be. He never flinched, not when I called past midnight about a missing remote, not when I asked him to help me pronounce German company names, not even when I tried to. Bait him into staying for a drink. Once, at 2 a.m., I called to complain that my wine tasted like battery acid. He showed up 15 minutes later with a new bottle. "Perhaps it's not the wine, sir," he said. "Perhaps it's the company." I laughed. Too long, too loud. He smiled. Barely. And that tiny smile, highlight of my week. Sometimes I wondered how much he got paid to put up with me. Whatever it wasn't enough. 1 week later. By week 2, I was done. I wanted to go home. Or whatever counted as home when your ceiling leaked and your landlord ghosted harder than your ex. A deal was a deal. 1 week of pretending, then hand Florian's shiny billionaire life back. Except, he vanished. No calls, no texts, nothing. By hour 3, I was panicking. And that's when Luca showed up with 4 strangers and a garment bag. "Sir, your stylists have arrived for the 4th of July address." My what now? After dismissing them, he studied me, brow furrowed. "You're pale. You hate speeches, but this one's simple." Right. The speech Florian never warned me about. He stayed all night helping me rehearse. Calm, precise, sleeves rolled up, voice steady enough to make me forget words existed. By morning, he was asleep on my couch, blazer over his shoulders. Something about it hit me hard, so I made breakfast. Badly. When he woke, confused, I said, "Don't sound so alarmed. It's edible." We ate quietly, sunlight spilling through the windows. For once, he looked human. "Cancel everything today," I told him. "You're taking me sightseeing," he sighed. "That's highly irregular." So am I. Later that evening, that's how we ended up spending the day as 2 anonymous idiots wandering through Berlin. Baseball caps, sunglasses, cheap ice cream. He showed me his favorite bookstore, his favorite park, and a cafe tucked behind an art gallery where nobody recognized us. For the first time in days, I forgot to panic. By nightfall, we ended up walking along the beach. Cool wind, streetlights flickering gold across the water. I don't remember who said what first, but somewhere between a bad joke and a shared laugh, something changed. He glanced at me, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "I've never seen this side of you before," he said quietly. I shrugged. "Guess I've been hiding it. Or maybe you've just never looked this close." He smiled, small but real. "It suits you." We stopped near the car. The air between us went still. Heavy, charged. Then I leaned in, or maybe he did. Either way, the world shrank to a heartbeat and a taste. His lips were warm, hesitant, but When I kissed him back, he melted, just for a second. Then he pulled away, breathless, glancing at his watch like he needed an excuse. I should go, he murmured. I can drop you off. No, he said, already stepping back. You should work on your speech. Right, the speech, the lie. I nodded, watching him disappear into the night, every nerve in my body screaming for him to stay. 2 days later, both the billionaire and his assistant ghosted me. Florian ignored every message, and Luca went full Houdini, answering calls, sending reminders, but never showing up. I'd managed to screw up a fake life in record time. By 5 p.m., I snapped and bullied HR into giving me Luca's address. Unethical? Yes. Worth it? Definitely. 2 hours later, I pulled up to his pristine townhouse in Florian's Maserati. Before I could knock, he stepped out, tie loose, eyes wide. Sir, is there an emergency? Relax, I said, waving a folder. Just wanted your opinion. Inside, everything smelled like espresso and sandalwood. It's the new speech, I said. He skimmed it, then blinked. You rewrote the whole thing. PR's version read like a tax audit. He laughed, quietly, genuinely. It's good. Feel human. We sat, coffee between us. So why have you been avoiding me? I asked. He froze. Avoiding you? Come on, you're good, but not invisible. A pause, then softly. You've changed since the US trip. Softer. It's confusing. My job depends on knowing where lines are. The words stung. I almost told him everything. The lie, the swap, the truth about who I was, but I didn't. You're right, I said. I crossed a line. You didn't. I did, I cut in, standing. And I should go before I do it again. He didn't stop me, and in the cold night air it hit me. I'd fallen for someone who didn't even know who I was, and worse, made him care anyway. 1 week later, by the time the stylists were done tugging at my sleeves and pinning my lapel, I looked every inch the billionaire I wasn't. They buzzed around me like bees around champagne, fixing hair, adjusting ties, murmuring in German I didn't understand. All I could think was, just get through this, then get the hell out. I'd left Luca alone all week. He still handled everything, emails, PR, schedules, but I hadn't seen him since that night at his apartment. Maybe that was for the best. Pretending to be another man was one thing. Falling for someone who thought you were that man was something else entirely. But it wasn't Luca keeping me up at night. It was Florian. Still no word, no calls, no texts, no smug selfies from New York rooftops. Just silence. I'd tried everything short of filing a missing persons report. Nothing. So yeah, once this little televised circus was over, I was done. First flight back to the States. Florian could explain why his American double had a criminal record and a German fan club. They called 5 minutes before to broadcast. I took one last look in the mirror. Perfect suit, perfect smile, perfect lie. Then I stepped into the hall. Luca waited by the ballroom doors. Black suit, open collar, no tie. He looked unfairly good. But when our eyes met, he looked away. No smile, no teasing quip. Just distance. I told myself it was fine. We'd talk after. Maybe. Music swelled. Cameras turned. I walked up to the podium, heart hammering loud enough to drown out the crowd. I drew breath for the first line. Herr Kroos! The shout sliced through the applause. 2 uniformed officers pushed through the crowd, badges gleaming under the lights. For a split second, I thought it was a drill. Then one of them pulled a warrant. You are under arrest for fraud, impersonation, and forgery. Enter Yest of flashback. The next day. If there were a Guinness World Record for fastest life ruined on live TV, I'd be polishing the trophy right now. The news was everywhere. Fake billionaire exposed. Imposter shocks Germany. Who the hell was that guy? I mean, if you're going to create an international scandal, at least make it stylish. So yeah, police custody. A fluorescent lit box, a metal chair, walls the color of depression. They'd tried questioning me for hours, and I did what any man raised on 20 seasons of NCIS would do. Lawyer up. Did I have a lawyer? Nope. Did they know that? Also, nope. I figured I'd milk that line until someone smarter than me walked in and bailed me out. Still, I sat there wondering when Florian would finally pop up. Any minute now, he'd walk in, flash some paperwork, and say something smug like, "Ah, my American twin! What a misunderstanding!" Except, no one came. By hour 6, I started worrying that maybe Florian wasn't coming back. Maybe he'd skipped out entirely. Maybe I was the world's dumbest fall guy. Then, an hour later, the door opened, and in walked Luca. He wasn't alone. 2 men in $1,000 suits trailed behind him. Company lawyers, I guessed, but I only had eyes for him. He looked lethal. Calm, sharp, too put together for the hour. His jaw was tight, his tie perfect, his eyes unreadable. "We're here for him," he said flatly to the officers. God, the way he said it, like I belonged to him now. The lawyer spoke quietly with the detectives for all of 5 minutes. Papers were signed, a few hands were shaken, and before I knew it, I was standing outside blinking against the daylight. Technically a free man. Luca was already holding the car door open. "Get in," he said. He didn't yell. He didn't even look angry. Somehow that made it worse. The ride was silent. Oppressively so. I tried counting traffic lights to distract myself, but the tension was so thick it felt like chewing glass. Finally, I cleared my throat. "So, we're not heading back to the penthouse?" "No," he said. One word. Cold. Final. "Okay," I tried again, forcing a laugh that sounded fake even to me. "Then, where are we?" "Airport." Just that. Airport. It hit like a gut punch. I sputtered, words tangling together before they could form a sentence. "Wait, Luca, look, I can explain, okay? I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Don't," he said. Not loud, not harsh. Just tired. Save it. He didn't look at me when he spoke again. "Florian called. Said you'd need a ride to the airport, that was all." Florian. The name alone was enough to jolt me upright. He called? He's okay? Can I talk to him, just for a sec?" That's when he finally turned his head, and that look, icy, hollow, surgical, was enough to shut me up mid-breath. The rest of the ride was wordless. The hum of the engine, the faint thrum of rain against the windshield, my own pulse hammering in my ears. Then the car rolled to a stop at the terminal. Luca got out, walked around, and opened my door. "Goodbye, Mr. Cruz." And that was it. He turned, got back into the car, and before I could say a single goddamn thing, he was gone, taillights vanishing into the fog. 1 month later, you'd think flying halfway across the world would be enough to escape the mess you made. Turns out, getting arrested on live television buys you the kind of fame that sticks. The morning after I got back, I woke up to half the national press camped outside my apartment. Vans, cameras, microphones. Someone even tried to bribe my landlord to let them in. Apparently, I'd gone viral. Some said I was a body snatcher. Others swore I was Florian's clone. There were conspiracy threads, TikTok edits, even a Reddit AMA about whether I was a government experiment. Everyone had a theory. Everyone wanted a quote. So, yeah, just like Germany, I couldn't leave the house without a disguise. Hoodie, sunglasses, baseball cap. The "don't look at me, I'm definitely famous" starter pack. But it wasn't all bad. Somewhere between the humiliation and the memes, my bank account started looking a lot healthier. The day after I landed, Florian finally called. He sounded calm. Too calm, like none of this was his fault. He apologized for going dark, said things got complicated, whatever that meant, and admitted he hadn't exactly thought through the fallout. Then he told me he'd taken care of a few things. Next thing I knew, there were new investment accounts in my name, a shiny safety net, and a $250,000 deposit sitting in my checking account. Transaction note. Hush money. Subtle. Still, I got the message. Keep quiet, stay gone, live well. And honestly, I was fine with that. Florian didn't owe me anything, but he did it anyway. For a guy who'd spent most of his life scraping by on coffee and unpaid invoices, that meant more than I could say. So yeah, I became a shut-in millionaire. Ordered ridiculous takeout, lobster, truffle pasta, imported wine, all the stuff I used to joke about. I'd eat alone, drink too much, and pretend I was still sitting across from Luca in that penthouse kitchen. Because that's the part I couldn't shake. I missed him. The way he'd roll his eyes when I said something stupid. The way he always looked one breath away from smiling, but never quite did. And the worst part? The last time he looked at me, it was with pure ice-cold betrayal. At least I'd memorized his number. A week after I got back, I called him. He picked up for 3 seconds. Luca! Hey, it's... Click. I called again. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Nothing. Now I just text him every few days. Nothing dramatic. Stupid things like, found a wine that tastes like that night you saved me from burning down the penthouse. He leaves them on read every damn time. 1 week later, you'd think the universe would give you a break once you start moving on. Instead, it sends him to your door. I'd ordered Chinese, double sesame chicken, extra rice, no shame. And when I opened the door, there he was, Luca, in a black turtleneck that short-circuited my brain. The takeout bag hit the floor. I hit the door, slammed it shut. Don't judge me. My place looked like a disaster zone. 10 seconds of panic cleaning later. Clothes shoved, cologne fog, fake composure. I reopened. Luca, I said, trying for calm. He raised a brow. You slammed the door in my face. I thought you were the press. He glanced at the low mean. Carrying dinner? Touché. He stepped inside, cold as ever. This isn't a personal visit. I'm here on behalf of my boss. Of course. Heaven forbid he came because he missed me. He handed me a phone. Florian's name flashed. I sighed. He's alive. Good to know. Answer it. Florian sounded disgustingly cheerful. Noah, I got a DNA test. You and I might be brothers. I blinked. What? Half-brothers. Same father. I'd like you to come confirm it. I looked at Luca, pretending not to eavesdrop. Wow, I said. That's something. So you'll come? I'll think about it. A pause. Think about it? Yeah, media circus. I just got used to not having paparazzi in my trash cans. Lie. The real reason was standing 2 feet away in Italian leather. Florian sighed. Fine. Talk to my assistant. Already here, I said. When the call ended, Luca crossed his arms. You might have a brother, and you're thinking about it? Yeah, and I might have PTSD from my last trip there. Most people would jump on a plane. Well, I'm not most people. He exhaled, sharp and irritated, unfairly attractive. I smiled. Tell you what, maybe you could change my mind. His jaw flexed, eyes flicked to my mouth, then back. I'll inform Mr. Cruz of your hesitation, he said tightly, and turned to go. I leaned on the doorframe. Maybe tell him his brother's reconsidering, depending on who's doing the convincing. He didn't look back, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Just like that, my boring exile was over. 1 week later, the universe apparently still had jokes. Last week, I was the one texting into the void. Now, Luca was the one filling. My inbox. Only his messages weren't, I miss you. They were, Noah, you need to come back. This is important. Stop ignoring me. By Friday, I'd had enough. I came home from a grocery run. Bread, eggs, too much wine. And there he was, standing at my door like a beautiful debt collector. Persistent, aren't you? I said, brushing past him. He followed me in. No invite needed. And while I cooked, He lectured about DNA tests, family legacy, closure. I half listened, stirring sauce, until I couldn't take it. Luca, I sighed, for the love of God, give it a rest. Let's talk about something else. He frowned. Like what? I turned. I don't know. Like the fact that we kissed, and it was amazing. That stopped him cold. Then he scoffed. Something in me snapped. You keep doing that, I said, slamming the spoon down. Doing what? Pretending it didn't happen. It didn't, he said flatly. I stared. What the hell does that mean? It means it was a mistake. No, I said, voice rising. A mistake is burning toast. That wasn't a mistake. He tried to pivot. Let's not. No, you don't get to erase it. And then he snapped. It didn't happen because it didn't. I thought you were someone else. Silence. I swallowed. Someone else? You mean Florian? He exhaled. Yeah, you had a thing for him. He sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. Had a stupid crush. I knew he was straight. I was fine with it until you came along and fucked everything up. My anger faltered. Luca, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You make me not want to think straight. He gave a tired laugh. Does that line usually work? I mean it, I said. I never meant to fall for you, but I did. He looked up, eyes soft but guarded. All those nights, the calls, the flirting. That was real. That was me. He sighed and stood to leave. I grabbed his hand. Just give me a chance. No lies, no games. For a second, he didn't move. Then quietly, I'll think about it after we go back to Germany, I groaned. You're obsessed with that trip. He hesitated. Because Florian's my best friend. And for once, he has something that makes him happy. The idea of a brother. You. That shut me up. He pulled away, left without another word. 1 month later. So, the weekend after that whole heart-to-heart, I packed my bags, got on a plane, and went back to Germany with Luca. Yeah, Germany? Again. Because apparently, I can't resist revisiting the scene of my own public humiliation. Anyway, the first thing we did was get a proper DNA test done. And guess what? Turns out my suspicion was right. Luca was the one who called the cops on me. Yeah, him. Mister. I'm just here to help you rehearse your speech. Apparently, he'd been onto me from day one. Even sent my prints to forensics to see if they matched Florian's. When they came back negative, a day after that kiss, he dropped the hammer. Cold, efficient, heart-shattering. Very on brand for him, honestly. But the test results? Yeah, that part blew my mind. Florian and I were twins. Actual, biological, identical twins. Which was absolutely insane. I didn't know if I was originally German or American, or maybe some tragic mix-up in a hospital nursery somewhere. But it was kind of nice knowing I had family, a real one, flesh and blood, not a landlord or a credit card collector. Florian was ecstatic. He was basically vibrating with joy for the entire week. Meanwhile, I was just trying to process the fact that I had a literal doppelganger turned brother who was already making plans for our joint future. He started talking about co-owning properties, vacation homes, maybe running a company together. You know, just twin things. It was sweet. A little manic, but sweet. I loved the guy, but I wasn't sure I was ready to trade in my crappy LA apartment for a castle in Munich. Still, there was one massive upside to all this chaos. I finally scored a date with Luca, and a real one this time. No body swapping, no lies, no pretending. The next day, my car pulled up to the address he sent me, and of course, it was that beach. The same one we'd walked the last time I was here. Figures. I didn't say anything about it, mostly because I didn't want to sound sentimental. Luca showed up a few minutes later, bottle of wine in one hand, 2 glasses in the other, looking like some kind of Italian heartbreak ad. We started walking along the shoreline, shoes in hand, salt in the air, That soft golden kind of silence that feels like a setup for something you'll regret later. We talked about random stuff, work, travel, his weird obsession with punctuality, and eventually, I dropped the news. "So, I'll be heading back to the States this weekend," I said. He looked over, frowning. "Why the rush?" I shrugged. "Last time I was here, I got tackled by German cops on live television. Kinda leaves a mark." He winced. "Right. Sorry about that." I waved it off. "Don't sweat it. You were just doing your job." We walked a little further before I sighed and said, "Hey, Luca. I'm sorry too." He raised an eyebrow. "For the whole thing," I said. "I didn't know you and Florian were best friends, or that you had feelings for him. I never meant to toy with that, or with you." Luca gave this soft laugh, the kind that's half genuine, half protective sarcasm. "I was onto you since the airport," he said. "Didn't think it was actually possible, but 2 days later I knew. And you know what pissed me off? I still let myself get swept up by someone I knew was an imposter." I froze mid-step because, well, ouch. He kept walking though, so I had to jog to catch up. "I had no idea who you were," he continued, "or where Florian was, if he were in danger, and there I was, falling for the enemy." That one landed right in my chest. He exhaled slowly. "I felt guilty for a while, but now I'm just glad it's all out. I'm not promising anything, but I'll try not to be so mean to you." I grinned. "Hey, that's progress. I'll take it." We spent the rest of the evening drinking on the beach, talking about nothing and everything, letting the tide erase whatever tension was left between us. When the night finally ended, he drove me back, and for the first time since this whole mess started, it didn't feel like I was pretending anymore. 3 days later, the next 3 days were basically me playing emotional tug-of-war with Florian. He'd decided that my going back to the States was equivalent to abandoning him, like I was riding off into the sunset, never to be seen again. I kept telling him I wasn't running away forever, that he could visit anytime, I'd visit too. We'd do the whole twin brothers and 2 continents thing. He didn't buy it, not really. The guy could sign billion-dollar contracts without blinking, but mention goodbyes, and suddenly he's 5 years old, clinging to his favorite toy. As for Luca, I hadn't seen him since our beach walk. Not a text, not a call, nothing. Which, of course, meant I'd spent the last 48 hours pretending I wasn't waiting for one. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang last night. His name flashed across the screen. "Hey," he'd said, voice smooth and casual, like we hadn't just had a semi-romantic existential confession by the ocean. "You want to ride to the airport tomorrow?" And just like that, I was 16 again. Elated, pathetic, grinning like an idiot into my pillow. Of course, I said yes. The next day. So here we were, standing at the terminal, surrounded by people hugging, crying, and losing luggage. My suitcase was already checked in, boarding pass printed, and that cheerful robotic PA had just announced the final call for my flight. It felt weirdly cinematic, like the universe was giving me the cue for my big, teary farewell scene. I turned to Luca. "Well, guess that's my cue." He just looked at me, that same unreadable expression, equal parts stern and soft. For a second, I thought he was going to do the classic handshake thing, maybe a polite pat on the back. Instead, he leaned in and kissed me. Just like that. Soft, certain, no warning. It wasn't a long kiss or a desperate one, more like punctuation. A full stop at the end of a sentence neither of us wanted to finish. When he pulled back, he said quietly, "Don't be a stranger." And before I could come up with something clever or ruin the moment with a bad joke, he turned and walked away. No dramatic backward glance. No movie score swelling in the background. Just him, fading into the crowd. I stood there for a moment, lips still tingling, heart doing that thing it wasn't supposed to do anymore. Then the PA blared again, louder this time, and I figured I'd better move before someone decided to fly my luggage without me. As I headed down the jet bridge, I couldn't help but think, for a guy who started out impersonating someone else's life, I'd somehow stumbled into one of my own. Conclusion: if you'd told me 2 years ago I'd end up with a German boyfriend, a twin brother, and a publishing company with my name on the door, I'd have laughed and told you to lay off the rom-coms. But here we are. The year after I got back was a blur, building my book company, writing, and actually being read. Between flights to Germany and Florian's chaotic visits to LA, life found a rhythm again. 6 months into the second year, Luca and I stopped pretending it was temporary. I asked him out, and we became official. Florian lost his mind when we told him, claimed he'd called it, swore he'd be best man when the time came. Typical Florian. I don't know what the future looks like. Maybe Berlin, maybe here, maybe both. But for the first time, I'm not in a hurry to figure it out. Because somewhere between the lie, the chaos, and one very inconvenient crush, I found something that finally feels like home. And this time, I don't have to pretend to be anyone else to keep it. The end. Have you ever had a doppelganger experience? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to become part of our Rainbow Force and consider joining our membership for early access and exclusive content. Stay wholesome.